I've walked these woods for 25 years. Every ridge, every game trail, every stream feels like home. I've tracked elk through snow, faced down a cougar, and thought nothing could surprise me here in the Pacific Northwest. But last October, near Mount Hood, I learned what even the grizzlies never taught me: how quiet the forest gets when a man decides to hunt you. This wasn't some random, unsettling encounter with a lost hiker or a weirdo who took a wrong turn. Oh no, this was different. I'm talking about a chilling, deliberate presence that folds itself into the silence, a shape that keeps perfect pace 2 ridges back, a boot print laid over your own while you're boiling coffee. This wasn't an accident. This was a hunt. And according to the FBI, over 400,000 stalking cases are reported annually in the US, many in remote areas where victims often feel the safest. That's how I came face to face with a silent stalker and learned the hard way that experience doesn't always save you. 48 hours, no gun, no cell bar, just me, my knife, and a stranger who never spoke a word. My gear for this trip was standard, meticulously chosen as always. A lightweight pack with my trusty Garmin GPS, a fixed blade knife, an ESEE4 if you're curious, a compact first aid kit, and a tactical flashlight, a Surefire G2X. My plan was simple, foolproof even. Double-check maps, inform my partner of my exact route and expected return, carry a whistle and bear spray, and rely on my decades of wilderness knowledge. I set out thinking I'd covered every single base. But the moment I noticed that subtly broken branch near my first campfire, just hours into the trip, everything started to unravel. The hike started bright and early that Friday, right at sunrise. I parked at the gated spur off Forest Road 42, shrugged on my 18-pound pack, a featherweight for a multi-day trip, and hiked a solid 8 miles to my favorite secluded bowl, nestled high above the Salmon River. The weather was perfect, crisp, clear, with stars still burning off into a brilliant bluebird sky. It was one of those days that makes you remember why you love the wilderness so much. I cut some fresh Douglas fir boughs for a soft bed, set a small, efficient fire, and sat back with that deep, satisfied ache you only earn when you've earned every single footstep. Around noon, I pulled out my binoculars and glassed the opposite slope, hoping to spot some elk. Nothing. Not a single movement. That really should have been my first hint. On a warm fall day like that, those hills should have been crawling with blacktails, gorging themselves for winter. Instead, the whole basin felt eerie, vacuum-sealed. I brushed it off, of course. Predators make game scarce. Maybe a cougar had recently pushed through, sending everything into hiding. I filtered some fresh water, strung up my bear line, and crawled into my bag as dusk settled in. Everything felt normal, if a little quiet. Then, at 2:17, the temperature dropped hard enough to yank me awake. My fire was just a bed of coals, barely glowing. That's when I heard it. A single footstep on frozen needles. Deliberate, measured, about 20 yards out. I sat up instantly, my heart already hammering against my ribs, a cold knot forming in my gut. Nothing followed. No sniff. No rustle, just the chilling memory of that solitary footfall hanging in the absolute dark. I tried to rationalize it, told myself it was just a branch snapping, and rolled over. But sleep came fitfully after that. My instincts, sharpened over a quarter century in the wild, were starting to prickle. Dawn broke gray, muted and cold. I boiled some oatmeal, the steam curling into the still air, and checked my GPS. Still 12 miles to the main trailhead in my truck. The plan was simple. Break camp, climb the ridge, then loop back along the old burn where the huckleberries usually grow thick. I started up the slope, my boots crunching on the frozen ground. Halfway up, I noticed them. Boot prints. They crossed my ascent track, heading downhill, fresh enough that the edges hadn't slumped. Size 12, a deep heel, and a waffle lug sole I didn't recognize. I knelt, studying them, feeling that little twinge of unease deepen into something more. Could be another hunter, I tried to tell myself, though rifle season was still 2 weeks out. My logical brain tried to find an explanation, but my gut screamed otherwise. As wilderness survival expert Tom Brown III often emphasizes, ignoring such subtle signs can be deadly. Awareness is key to proficiency in stalking and movement. You must be acutely aware of your surroundings. I followed my map, kept climbing, but now I was looking over my shoulder. At the ridge crest, I stopped to glass again, my breath fogging in the cold air. The prints reappeared. This time, they were angling in from the west, cutting my line like a scissor. They hadn't been there when I passed this exact spot an hour earlier. Someone was paralleling me, close enough to watch me leave, then stepping into my boot track, erasing their own. That's when that cold worm crawled right up my spine. My mind started replaying every survival lesson I'd ever learned. If you've ever felt that sudden, icy spike of adrenaline, you'll know what happened next. I unclipped the chest strap on my pack, loosened my knife in its sheath, and started the descent toward the burn, my senses on high alert. The next 4 miles were a terrifying, silent game of cat and mouse. I'd stop, crouch low, and listen intently. 10 seconds later, a twig would pop uphill, always just out of sight. He was there. He was always there. I started leaving decoy tracks. Walk 10 paces, hop a log, backtrack along the trunk, then veer off at a right angle beneath a carpet of sword ferns. Classic evasion, textbook stuff. But I could feel him reading me, correcting, sliding like smoke through the understory. Once, I circled wide and hid behind a massive blowdown, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against the damp earth. 30 yards away, a shape moved. Tall, hooded, his face lost in shadow. He paused, turned his head as if sniffing the air, then stepped behind a hemlock and simply wasn't there anymore. No crunch of leaves, no sway of branches. Gone. Tom Brown III says the best stalkers blend their movements silently and effectively across any terrain. This guy was a master. I pulled out my GPS, checked the battery. 72%. Good. I marked a waypoint labeled Help, set the alarm to ping every 30 minutes, and started running the ridge spine toward a clear cut I knew dropped to a logging road. If I could just make the road, maybe flag down a truck, maybe sprint the 6 miles to the ranger station. My lungs burned, air rasping in my throat. But fear is a far better stimulant than espresso. I covered 2 miles in under 20 minutes, sliding on loose rock, my hands bleeding from grabbing Devil's Club to keep my balance. At the clear-cut edge, I stopped dead. Fresh prints again. Same waffle lug, this time coming uphill toward me. He'd looped ahead, blocked my exit, and was now hunting back along the only corridor I had left. I was boxed in, a cliff band dropping 200 feet to white water just behind me. I backtracked 20 yards, dropped into a shallow swale, and dug in fast. I scraped leaf litter into a low, camouflaged pile, burrowed until only my face showed, and smeared ash from an old fire ring on my cheeks to break up my skin tone. Rule 1 when you're hunted: break your silhouette, kill your scent, become part of the ground. I breathed through my mouth, slow, shallow, counting heartbeats. At 120 beats per minute, you shake. At 60, you think. At 40, you disappear. I needed sub 40. Psychological resilience is critical in these situations. Managing fear and stress through mental preparation, routine, and positive visualization improves decision-making under pressure. I focused on my breathing, on the texture of the dirt against my cheek. Minutes stretched like taffy, each one an eternity. A Stellar's jay scolded somewhere to my left, its harsh cry echoing through the trees, then abruptly shut up. That meant something big, something on 2 legs, was close. I watched the gap through a lattice of Oregon grape. He came like a wraith, no rush, head sweeping in a lazy, methodical grid. His hood was down now, but his face was still hidden by shadow, obscured by the low light in the angle. A day pack sat tight to his back, his hands empty. No rifle, no bow, just a 6-inch hunting knife dangling sheathless from his belt. He passed within 8 feet of me. I smelled wood smoke, damp wool, and that metallic tang that leaks out of people who've decided something final. He paused, scanned the swale, looked straight over my head. I thought my heart would punch through the earth. Then he moved on, uphill, following my old tracks, completely unaware I was there. I waited until the jay started scolding again, counted slowly to 100, then rose, quiet as mist. My legs shook so hard I had to clamp my thighs together just to stay upright. I backtracked north, cut west across a scree field, then dropped into the very drainage I'd camped above that first night. The water roared below, too loud for stealth, but it also masked my movement, a double-edged sword. I slipped, fell waist-deep into the icy current, soaked my boots, but kept going. Hypothermia beats strangulation, I reasoned. By dusk, I reached a hollow cedar, half-hollowed by fire, big enough to crawl inside. I wedged myself in, smeared mud over any bright spots on my clothing, and pulled my emergency blanket, silver side in, of course, so no reflection would give me away. I chewed a strip of jerky, drank some chlorine-tainted water from my filter, and forced myself to breathe using box counts. 4 in, hold 4. Out 4, hold 4. My mind wanted to sprint ahead to every worst ending imaginable. I reeled it back. Present moment. Cedar, blanket, heartbeat. Nothing else existed. Shelter and safety are paramount. Building concealed shelters and maintaining a calm center help maintain physical and mental stability. Night settled cold, unforgiving. I set twig tripwires 3 yards out. Nothing lethal, just alerts. At 23:40, one snapped, crisp as a .22 shot. I came awake knife first, adrenaline flooding my system. Silence. Then footsteps, soft, measured, getting closer. A shape darker than the dark itself stopped 2 yards from my cedar. I could smell him again. Smoke, damp wool, and that coppery something. He knelt. His finger brushed my tripwire. Then he rose. He spoke for the first and only time. A single whisper. Soon. Then he walked upslope, his boots grinding like slow millstones until the forest swallowed him whole. I didn't sleep again. Not a wink. At first light I moved, numb. My joints rusted stiff from the cold and the tension. I had one card left. The river. If I could lash together a crude raft, ride the current 6 miles, I'd hit a seasonal fish station cabin with a radio. I spent an hour collecting young alder branches, stripped cordage from my bootlaces and belt, and wove a crude mat. Ugly, but it floated. I shoved off, my feet in the 42-degree water, hands blistering on the poles I used to keep off rocks. Halfway down, the river narrowed, the current picked up and slammed me into a boulder. The raft folded like cardboard. I swam for shore, my lungs searing, crawled out onto a sandbar, vomiting icy water. When I rolled over, he stood 10 feet away, knife in hand, his face finally visible. Plain, forgettable, eyes like bullet holes in paper. I scrambled back, pulling my own blade. He stepped forward, casual, like he was asking for the time. 25 years, he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. And you still walk alone. He lunged. I slashed, felt steel bite flesh, hot blood spatter across my cheek. He grunted, a low animal sound, and sliced back, catching my jacket, ripping through fleece and skin. We grappled, fell, rolled toward the churning water. I kneed him hard in the groin, head-butted, felt cartilage crunch beneath my skull. He reeled, momentarily stunned. I grabbed a baseball-sized rock, swung with all my remaining strength, and connected with his temple. He dropped, twitched once, and lay still. I staggered back, chest heaving, every muscle screaming. I checked my wound, shallow but bleeding hard. I wrapped it with my headlamp strap, cinching it tight. He was breathing, a shallow, ragged sound, but out cold. I couldn't stay. Predators have friends. Dead men tell no tales, but live ones sue. Or worse, come back. I left him there, stumbled 2 miles downstream until the cabin roof appeared like a miracle through the trees. The radio still worked. I gave my coordinates, sat on the step, and watched my blood drip onto the cedar planks until the thud of chopper blades filled the valley. Sheriffs never found him. They found my blood, his blood, the rock, the knife, that's it. He vanished like smoke. I still hike. Can't quit the woods, it's in my soul. But I carry a satellite beacon now, and I always hike with a buddy. And every time the forest falls quiet, I remember the lesson no trail guide ever printed. The most dangerous animal always walks on 2 legs, and silence is just his way of saying grace. Remember, according to wilderness crime data, the scariest thing in the forest isn't always the wildlife. It's what's hiding in plain sight. If this story rattled you, good. Share it with the friend who thinks nature's only threat is weather. Drop your own close call in the comments. I read every one. Hit subscribe for more survival stories that keep you looking over your shoulder. Stay safe out there, and never, ever trust the silence.